house.
Very good. All right, we move into the second part of our tiered list here on the Irish NFL show. We've done the first 8 teams in draft order. We now move into the second group of 8 teams, and we start in Chicago. And referring back to the first part where I praised both Kieran and Brian for their restraint in not going over the top time-wise on their respective teams, I will pay tribute to that by summing up briefly what my expectations are for the Bears this year. I went for 6 wins last year. I ended up one short. They did manage to get to 7. I'm not getting carried away this year, and let's see how Caleb performs. And a lot of the right noise is being made. Great to see Roma Dunze drafted the way things worked. Seriously strong receiver room. All of the weapons are there. A lot of reasons to feel that Caleb will have all the support that he needs to get going. But you're learning a new offense. You're in the NFL. No matter how good you are, not sure that line is necessarily all that it could be in front of him. Defensively, I like what I see. Eberflus obviously pulled things around last season when they had to let go of the defensive coordinator. I'm going to go for 7 to 9 wins for the Bears. If they even out on last year's 7, I don't think that's a disaster. If they get to 8 or more, I think you're in bonus territory, which I know is not necessarily where the expectation is among Bears fans. But I'm setting my expectations a little bit more realistically than some of my confreres out there. Kieran, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd be the same. I think 7 to 9 wins would be a good reflection of a first year under Caleb Williams. My concern is Caleb Williams and his kind of demeanor and his ability to handle the big time. Now you got to remember, in college, it's a much shorter season. They typically end, late October, early November. He's going to be going into another 7-8 weeks after that, and that's not even counting if they get into the playoffs. I worry about the temperament. He's gone from, Tinseltown to Chicago, 2 big cities, big spotlights. I just worry about him handling the big time and all the expectations. I love Dunze, loved him when he was with Washington. And, they made a lot of great upgrades in places they needed to. MVP is going to be Eberflus's hair. I see a good season in Chicago.
MVP is going to be Eberflus's wife, Kelly, who suggested the hair. She's the real power behind the throne there.
Didn't even recognize him.
Brian, I know we were watching the first episode of the Bears Hard Knocks, and we spoke about this with Carmen Vitali on a podcast during the week, which if you haven't heard it, is worth checking out. Carmen is the NFC North reporter for Fox Sports, and she was kind of doing a little bit of a sharp intake of breath with the hype machine, and they played the Alan Parsons Project series, the famous intro music for the Chicago Bulls, and they're talking about Williams filling the hole that Michael Jordan has left, and Chicago hasn't had this hero, and it's like, oh, you're really swinging for the fences there. You're kind of setting the guy up for a fall.
Oh, sure. Look, the goosebumps were going, I imagine, Connor. And for now, when you watch that particular moment on the show, with all due respect, it's probably one of the better, albeit the first episode, one of the better series we've seen over the course of the last few years, in particular around training camp. But that's probably because the hype is real for this particular team right now. It doesn't help when you have certain people like Nick Wright coming out and suggesting that they're going to go to the Super Bowl. That just blows my mind in a way. It probably blows other fans' minds. And then obviously the heightened expectation just slowly moves up. You go from a scenario where fans are comfortable with 7 to 9 to, well, we really should be getting into the 10 scenario. We got 7 last year. We've got a brand new quarterback and arguably a generational guy. It's 7 and 9 for me as well, but I still see an upside of the 7 and 9. I think it'll be a better team this year. I'm still not convinced by the head coach, but it seems to have a different demeanor. I get the Ben McAdoo vibes when he had that first good season as a head coach, and he came back looking all slick, and it didn't really play out that way. But 7 and 9, I think the team will be going in an upward trajectory. But what you spoke about on that particular podcast, Carmen, is so relevant. You spoke about how all 4 teams could realistically be in the playoff hunt come December. And that's the only way that really happens is if they're all beating up on each other in a roundabout way. So that could be the difficulty. It's going to be a hard slog in the North this year, but still I see them in the 7 and 9 category.
No, like Matty Eberflus's hair, is it going to be a glow up or is it going to blow up?
Sorry, can I just put this up here now? Yeah, is that the way it goes? No, I'm actually. Actually, that's where I'm going.
What's above 17?
7 and 9. No, I'm with you guys. Look, I'm as a fan. Obviously, I'm delighted with watching what's been happening. I think they've made some really good moves, as you guys have said. Some Roma Dunze looked like a really good pick. Caleb Williams obviously is the big question. We've seen it before in Chicago with quarterbacks, and we've had the messiahs coming in who are going to change it all, who didn't. So it's going to be interesting to see how that happens. But you mentioned it, Connor. There's a new OC, so there's a new scheme here. You've got a few new players coming in. I mean, they look good on defense. I think Javon Dexter is being pegged at that 3-tech role. He seems to be, from all reports, kind of looking really good at that. So hopefully that's a positive. But I'm between 9 and 10 wins. But I think realistically, you're probably looking at 7 and 9. And while expectations have kind of shot up a bit, I think people, look, that's all fun. You're a fan. It's great. It makes it exciting. But I think realistically, if they can move, there were 3 wins the season before. There were 7 wins last year. If they can get to 8 or 9, you know, you're still going forward, and who knows what happens. But the more things change, the more they stay the same. Every year, this O-line worries me. And for a little while, it looked like everything was going smooth. And the last couple of weeks, we've just seen some issues there. And that's going to have a big impact on that young quarterback trying to adapt to the NFL. So I think 7 and 9 is the safe kind of bet where I'd go.
Brian, you wanted to make a quick point before we let Kieran off the leash on the Jets.
Yeah, I suppose I better hold off for Kieran what's coming ahead of first, because it could be carnage. But Noel's got the Eberflus thing going on there. I don't know if anybody picked up on it. Yeah, he's been down to see the local hairdresser. He certainly
You
is.
like that? I was watching Mojo on this screen, and I had a mirror on this screen, and I would freeze frame every time the Flus went past, and just, you know.
Certainly. Either watching up on this as well, or Noel and the wife are watching Hard Knocks.
Well, the only difference is my wife hates the beard, so that won't be staying too long.
Without further ado, Kieran, your Jets are up. Go nuts.
You know, when you buy stocks, they give you the little phrase, past performance is not indicative of future results. Well, guess what? Past performance is very indicative of future results. This is the Jets. This is the same old Jets. Give me 4 wins. I don't believe in anything with the Jets. They have a great team. Yes, but guess what? It's the Jets. They'll find a way. I love Garrett Wilson. I think he's a great wide receiver. They've the number 1 rated defense in the league. Everything points towards a 10-win season, but it's the Jets. Give me 4 to 6. They're going to blow up. Rodgers goes down. He's going to fight with everybody in fighting. Nate Hackett will be gone week 7. New York Post is going to blow up with all sorts of stories about it. Rodgers is going to blow up with all the running backs and all the wide receivers. Disaster in where they play. Whatever town that is in Jersey, they practice. Think it, Jets.
Brian?
10 wins. Playoff bound. Jets.
No chance. No chance.
But what I will say is things will be going so well, and then they'll come into the playoffs with great expectations, and the wildcard team will come and gazump them, whether it's on the road or whether at home, and then there'll be a bigger conversation around how this team can have such a successful season and yet find a way to be out of the playoffs one and done, i.e. like the Cowboys in the scenario in which they had in the divisional round this year. I think they have enough talent there if they get it right, and if Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback that we saw over the last 5 years at the right moments. I think there's enough there for this team to certainly win 10 games. So I'm going to buy into it for this year.
Brian, I thought I was going to be the lone optimist here. I think the Jets are going to the playoffs as well. And, you know, I am no fan of Aaron Rodgers as a person, as we all know, but he's an unbelievable quarterback. If that Achilles is as right as it seems to be, I don't see that there's any way or any reason why they shouldn't get to double-digit wins and go to the playoffs. I do, however, think they'll go one and done in the playoffs because, you know, when it gets right down to it, that's been the Rodgers trick, except the one time when it wasn't. He's never really been able to lead a team through and to the promised land. And the one time he did, he had a hell of a lot of other leaders on that team around him. I think that's the one thing that they're slightly missing, and it's going to hurt them when it really comes down to it. I have my very serious doubts about Nate Hackett, but I have very serious reasons to fear Aaron Rodgers, and I think he's got enough talent around him, and I think that is a championship caliber defense. I don't think there's any argument there. No, what do you reckon?
No, I'm with yourself and Brian. I think they'll get inside that 10-13 win bracket. I think they just have so much talent there. Kieran mentioned, obviously, they have a really, really good defense, and if Aaron Rodgers can be somewhat near what he has been in the past, then I think they have enough on offense to really trouble teams. And I think they're playoff bound as well. But again, like you guys, I don't think
they put 7 wins out of nowhere last year.
Yeah.
You know, if Rodgers is even the average version of Aaron Rodgers, he doesn't have to be MVP Rodgers.
Sorry. There's no way they should have beat the Bills. No way they should have beat the Giants. They're a fraud.
Aaron, I have to do it. I'm really sorry.
The four teams that find themselves in the upper echelons, and it's the Jets. Kieran's gonna have a bad night tonight.
I can't buy the Jets at all.
No, Vikings are an interesting one in the north. You know, again, another one we talked about with Carmen Vitali the other night. She's very high on, as a lot of people are, and I would tend to agree on Kevin O'Connell as a coach. I think that's a really good landing spot for JJ McCarthy. Not necessarily sure how soon we're going to see him. The mantra in Minnesota is very much, we're going to give it time. We're going to be patient about this one. And they're giving Sam Darnold $10 million, right? So they've got 10 million reasons to play him and to see how that one pans out. I got to say, I see the Vikings being in that solid 7 to 9 win category. I think the North is going to be an absolute knife fight this year, but I don't think they're going to be way out of it.
No, I agree. I think this is a really good team. There will obviously be questions at quarterback. You know, will Sam Darnold start the season? He hasn't been very good. He's had a couple of chances. It hasn't worked out, which means you probably, if he does, see JJ McCarthy by week 6, 7 kind of thing. And how will he adapt to it? Obviously, people talk about how few times he threw the ball over his career compared to other quarterbacks, because obviously they like to run the ball a lot in college. But look, you've Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. They've some really good players on defense. I know they lose Hunter, but they bring in essentially a swap with Kennard. I just think this Vikings team is a good team, and a lot of people talking about them being bottom of the NFC North. But I mean, it's splitting hairs there, because I don't think there's a massive difference between them and, say, the Bears, for example. So yeah, I'm going 7-9 as well. I think there's some really good players there, and as you say, the head coach, you know, he knows how to call a game, and he could be the difference in some games. For example, when they play the Bears, when it's O'Connell versus Eberflus, I worry, because I just you know what I mean. The talent for me is on the offensive side of that mind game. I just think they're a good team with some good players and good coaches, and you know they Ryan Flores defense can blitz and cause problems. So I think 7-9 for them.
Brian?
Love Kevin O'Connell. If Brian Dale wasn't to be the coach of the Giants next year, and if somehow Kevin O'Connell was free, I'd be immediately looking for him. He's a fantastic coach. We had the privilege of interviewing him a couple of years ago. Some of the information which he was feeding in that interview was lights out stuff in terms of how you manage quarterbacks. And obviously he'd come from the Rams. They just won the Super Bowl. But for me, they're going into the 4 to 6 category, and it's down to the quarterbacks. And like JJ McCarthy, this JJ McCarthy, storyline just blew up in the off season around when he was going to be selected in the draft. But having watched the Giants content, and the Giants were quite open in allowing certain things to be published as part of the Hard Knock series. It was quite evident they had no interest really in taking JJ McCarthy. It was all a smoke screen. There was 3 quarterbacks in play. If they weren't there, for them it was a huge drop off. And Sam Darnold all of a sudden has become this fantastic quarterback again that everyone has to have. And it reminds me when Mitch Trubisky sat behind Josh Allen for a year. He got the contract in Pittsburgh, on the back of nothing. And Sam Darnold's got an opportunity on the back of nothing either, because he didn't really play for the 49ers, with the exception of coming into games in the fourth quarter last year. I think 2 quarterbacks that they'll start with Darnold. He'll probably struggle to bring in JJ McCarthy. I could see a scenario where if he struggles, we'll see Sam Darnold back in. And as Colin used to say, quarterback hokey cokey. So for me, it's a 4 to 6 season, and this team should be better because they've got some fantastic players. But I think it's down to the quarterback situation. There you go.
Kieran, can Kevin O'Connell make a success out of the failed Jets quarterback, Sam Darnold?
Nope. Darnold, you're seeing ghosts. I completely agree with Brian. I think it's a 4 to 6 win, 4 to 6 win season for the Vikings. That's a poor quarterback room right there. I don't see enough in talent for those two. Just to, even if they do interchange the quarterbacks, and that's the problem. When you got 2 quarterbacks, you got none. And Jefferson deserves better than that. It's gonna be a tough season, and 4 to 6 wins in Minnesota.
I had that when you've got 2 quarterbacks, you got none quote pocketed for the Raiders, because of course it's a John Madden quote. I'm gonna have to change my intro now. Thanks for that, Kieran.
We're 2-2 on that, but I'm going to go 4 to 6 because Connor, I think we hope they're both the boys are correct in their prediction. So there we go.
It will not be the class of the North, that's for sure.
Well, let's move on to the Broncos, and with due apologies, Colin, because I know he's listening and watching. Shout out to Colin Cronin. I'm putting the Broncos in the 0 to 3 category. There's no talent, no hope. I think Sean Payton's going to be looking for a new job at the end of the season. Brian.
Oh my God, Connor! Jesus Christ! I show no respect for your former colleague whatsoever.
I have all the respect in the world for him. I just don't respect his team.
Look, this reminds me a bit of the Patriots conversation earlier, and I try to keep this again. I'm conscious that we're trying to blitz teams, but because of the nature of the head coach and the scheming that he has, and then we're talking about the Chargers having a difficult season as well, may not be a difficult season, but Kieran alluded to maybe potentially 3 wins. Well, then you would have to think that the Broncos are knocking off teams in the division, and the Raiders are probably a team that they can also find ways to knock off. I think Sean Payton is worthy of coaching a team that can at least win 46 games, not make the playoffs, but I don't think it's as bad as 0-3. I'll stick them in the 4-6.
No.
I think they're a disaster zone, to be honest with you. I think Kieran said if you have two quarterbacks, you've none. Well, I think if you've Bo Nix, Jarrett Stidham, and Zach Wilson, you've no quarterbacks. I think Nix was just way overdrafted. Now, who knows, maybe he'll hit the ground running, but there's no talent in that team. I think, no, I'm 0-3. Yeah, there we go.
Kieran, does Bo know football?
Bo is apparently third on the depth chart. It was news to him when he heard it. No, I'd agree with everything. I would give them 4-6. I think they're going to be terrible, but I purely based on the fact that they went on that run last year, and Peyton's got, he's got enough, a former quarterback himself. He's got enough that he can give the bare kind of essentials to somebody to get at least 4 wins out. Barely 4 wins. It's going to be bloody hard going for Denver fans.
Oh, look, I went with the lads last time, so Connor, I'm going with me and you this time.
I sure Washington were getting lonely in there, Connor. You had to put them in there.
Yeah.
Okay, Raiders again. I'm going to go quick fire here. Coaching matters, right? And a lot of this is going to come down to whether the Raiders playing staff's confidence in Pearson, the lobbying for him, and particularly from Max Crosby, which carried a lot of weight, actually does bear fruit, and whether he is the guy. There are promising signs there. There's also not an awful lot to get excited about on the roster. And look, Gardner Minshew ain't the guy who's going to carry you to greatness either. I will put them in the 4-6 category and be pretty confident that they're not either going to underwhelm, and neither are they going to break out from there. Brian?
When we did our AFC West piece, I think some of us were quite critical of the Raiders. I think I was one of them, and some of the remarks on our YouTube channel was quite enjoyable in a way, but also a bit startling, because some Raiders fans were suggesting this team is primed for a playoff run, and even a deep playoff run in the AFC. I just can't see it. And if you read the reports right now, and I know it's a training camp and it's a very different situation come September, neither of the quarterbacks are lighting up by all accounts. Now, again, I'm conscious it's training camp and they haven't played a game yet. But Gardner Minshew hasn't been lighting up, nor has Aidan O'Connell. I'm in the 4-6 category. I think Antonio Pierce will keep his job and all the rest that comes with that. But they'll eke out wins, but it's a tough slog in that division anyway. And they're playing against the Chiefs, and they've got a difficult schedule. 4-6 for me.
No, can you go higher than 4-6? Can you make the case?
To be honest, I'm bouncing between 6 wins and 7 wins, and maybe I'll just give him the 7-9 to be nice. I mean, Gardner Minshew, I actually like him as a quarterback, but he done well last year for the Colts when he had to come in for Richardson. But ideally, don't want him starting all the time. But I still think he can be okay. Devontae Adams, Myers, Bowers, we'll see how he does. And then you've obviously Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins came in free agency. So I don't know. I just, for some reason, I don't like Getsy. He's someone who you talk about coaching, who obviously didn't have a good time with the Bears, and I'm wondering if that'll carry through. So I'll go with the 4-6. As I say, I wouldn't be surprised if they got 7, but I think maybe it's more likely, hitting that 4-6 mark.
Kieran, as Noel mentioned, they did pick up Brock Bowers in the draft, who's an interesting addition to that offense, and a guy that a lot of people thought pound for pound was the most talented offensive player available. Is that enough to make a difference?
Yeah, I mean, I like everyone else. I got 4-6 wins too. It's the worst quarterback room in the league, in my opinion. The honeymoon is over for Pierce. It's again, it comes down to talent, and a lot of people are forgetting is the O-line, the importance of the O-line. They've lost Carmen Brasillo, and they lost Illuminor, which was a huge piece of their O-line. They got a coach. They let a coach go. Well, the Giants picked him up, but that was he put a really top 10 O-line right there. And without those components, 4 wins.
So are we putting the Raiders in? I think we're all aligned there that they're going to be 4-6. The
4-6,
Saints,
yeah.
Brian, I'll start with you. You had a lot of hope for the Saints last year. They didn't quite live up to it in the end. I think you had them in the playoffs. It just never really happened for Derek Carr, and it all looked a little bit frustrating, certainly for him, but also for his receiver core, who were kind of confused at times as to why he was getting annoyed when he'd thrown a ball 10 yards out of bounds that was completely uncatchable. Is it going to be any better this year? They brought in Clint Kubiak from the 49ers. They want to install that Shanahan-style offense that dominates the league, which, in year one is always going to be a challenge. And we'll see how that goes. But what do you reckon?
Fill me once, shame on you. Fill me twice, shame on me. Hey Connor, well, I'm buying the pie again. I'm going for the Saints to win the NFC South this year. I mean, this off season, people say, "Oh, the Bucks have won the off season in March because they got Baker Mayfield back, and obviously Mike Evans is back and various other players on the defensive side." But the Saints, in their own right, last year had great opportunities to win games, and we discussed earlier on about the erratic nature of the Falcons. I think the Saints can bounce back. I think the head coach has to get a good season out of this team, and I'm going to go for them to make the playoffs. And for them to make the playoffs, they're going to be winning. If we have the Falcons in a 7-9, realistically, we're going to have the Bucks in around that as well. So I'm putting them in the 10 category because I need them to be there to win this division. So there you go. Nothing beyond 10, but enough to win the division. There you have.
This Saints-Titans Super Bowl with the Saints at home in New Orleans in February is going to be fantastic. Noel, what do you think?
No, I'm very much opposite to Brian. I don't make the Saints team. Excuse me. I think they may have one of the worst O-lines in the league. I think Derek Carr, when he's behind a bad O-line, is a bad quarterback. Other than Chris Olave, there's nothing on offense that I really look at and say you can hang your hat on that. No, I'm going to be generous and I'll give them 4 to 6 wins, but I don't rate the Saints at all.
Yeah, I'm going to agree squarely with you, Noel. I can't make the case to get excited about the Saints this year. You know, they've been kicking the can down the road for years. We've talked about the financial engineering that they've done, and I think the bill is about to start coming due. I don't think they're doing anything this year. 4 to 6 is as good as it gets. Kieran?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think this is the last year we're going to see Carr throwing the ball, and I think it's the last year we'll see Dennis Allen on the sideline. I mean, they played Dallas, Philadelphia, and the Chiefs by week 5, I think, and that is a brutal start of the season. So 4 to 6 wins for me.
Yeah, I think during the season the off season when we done our predictions for the divisions, I think I actually predicted Dennis Allen to be the first head coach to go this season. So I'll stand by that, but I just don't rate them.
All right,
Sorry,
the Colts. The Colts, Kieran, are an interesting proposition. We saw flashes of what Anthony Richardson might be capable of last year. Again, you know, and it's interesting that it was the two former Eagles coordinators who both found themselves in slightly frustrating situations, but emerged with a lot of credit for how they did their job and how scrappy their teams were under the circumstances. For the Colts, I think there are reasons to be hopeful going into this season. Obviously, they'll have a hope to benefit from a fully fit Jonathan Taylor as well as a fully fit Anthony Richardson. They're happy with their coaching situation. Is it going to be slightly better than it was last season? Will they be able to make it pay?
No, I'm not as high on the Colts as everybody else seems to be. Again, it comes back to the quarterback play. I don't think Richardson has the durability to last the season. I think he's going to get hurt again. Again, it comes down to weapons. Taylor's a great running back, but you can't run the ball all the time. You got to spread it out. Pittman and a bunch of other guys. That's really it on the offense. I mean, the only thing you can hang your hat on is a great O-line. But I'm not as high. I don't see the Colts hype. I mean, saying that, I do have them at 7 wins, but I don't see Richardson as the guy that everyone else does. I think he's too injury prone.
No.
I'll go 7 to 9 as well. I'm probably a little more buoyant on them than Kieran there. I mean, look, Richardson is going to be a question mark. Will he get injured again, or how will he adapt to the NFL? Because obviously he didn't get too much playing time last year before he was injured. Jonathan Taylor is obviously a top running back. I think Pittman isn't a 1A kind of wide receiver, but I think he's a good wide receiver to have leading the line. And then we'll see what Mitchell is like, who they drafted in. So yeah, I mean, I think the Colts will be okay. I think probably 7 or 8 wins is where I'd have them. So 7 to 9 for me.
Brian, I see nothing to argue with in what the lads have said. I'm going to go 7 to 9. What do you think?
No, if it's a full house, I totally agree. I think they're well capable of beating teams in the division. I think they're well capable of shocking teams in the league. I think Joe Flacco might be one of the more interesting players again this season if Anthony Richardson cannot stay fit. I think they've got a worthy back up there in Joe Flacco, who won't be playing in adverse weather conditions at home, in particular for home games in that dome. I think he can go down slinging the ball. The 7 wins, they're definitely capable of 7 wins.
Right, full house there, as Brian was saying. Right, let's move on now to the Seahawks, and probably got one of the more prized coaching hires. Brian Callahan and Mike McDonald from the Ravens were the two guys that everybody was looking at very closely. I suppose you could probably throw Ben Johnson into that mix, but he decided to stay where he was as offensive coordinator with the Detroit Lions. But the Seahawks got their guy. They wanted a defensive guy. They're reasonably happy with what they've got offensively. Certainly got a red hot receiver room. If you're a believer in Gino and that he can recapture the magic of a year ago, that could be quite an interesting ride. It's a tricky division though, as we know, which makes it hard to know what you're going to get out of Seattle. What do you think?
Yeah, I think for me the question is Gino. I'm not a big Gino believer, to be honest. He has proved me wrong over last couple of seasons, but in general, I'm not really. But you talk about they've got in Mike McDonald, who you can sort out that defense. And I think the Seahawks have some good players there, and I think they have an ability to shock teams and to beat teams. So I'd be going 7-9 for them. I think they could do something there. Yeah, 7-9, I think.
Kieran?
Nah, I got them 4-6. It's gonna be a tough year for McDonald. I mean, I don't know if you saw DK Metcalf swinging his helmet around the other day. He's a loose cannon. He's a hell of a talent. But I mean, I saw him do similar stuff when he played at Ole Miss. Just, you're getting both sides here. It's just which one is going to show up. Freakishly athletic, but he's, what's going on in the head of his. Seattle travels 26,000 miles this season. That is a brutal amount of flying they got to do. And again, I think the talent level has gone down. It's not as strong as it has been. Geno Smith, I mean, how many more years is he going to put up these kind of, borderline MVP seasons? This is going to be a down year for him too. Smith and Jigba and Kenneth Walker, they're going to take a little step back too. So I'm not high on the Seahawks at all. I think there's going to be a tough go for them this year.
Brian?
I think they'll start 2-0 because they play the Broncos and they play the Patriots, who we've suggested could be in the 0-3 category, and people will kind of start to buy in very quickly on them. But on McKieran, I think as the season progresses, they're going to fall back in difficult situations. And I think a lot of it's down to what Kieran is suggesting. I'm kind of doubling down on his point, but the real attribute of this head coach would be how he deals with the strong characters in this locker room, both offensively and defensively. And I think he might struggle on that part. You could argue he's had that in Baltimore, and he's dealt with it. It's a different dynamic when you're the head coach. I'm in the 4-6 category.